So the Mane Mane no Mi makes a return. Shonen Ouji here to dig deeper into your favorite anime and manga. And in this One Piece review, I want to talk about what I liked about Odin, what I liked about Orochi, and what I liked about Blackbeard in this chapter. So with that all out of the way, let's get into the review of One Piece chapter 965. So I want to start by talking about Orochi. Specifically, I want to talk about this twist with this old lady who Orochi meets at the very, very, very early part of this flashback we're in. It's definitely made a major impact on Orochi's character. Now, let me clarify what I mean. So, just in case you don't watch my reviews, I've been saying that Orochi has reminded me of Dio. Dio in JoJo, he starts from a place of poverty, but because of the way he sees the world and because of his natural craftiness, he scratches out a place for himself in the world based on his view that the world is for his taking and that he can usurp power, and that's what he does. And for a while, for a few weeks, that's what it seemed like Orochi was doing. And it's still what he's doing, but it's changed a bit in the sense that I had originally said Orochi kind of seemed like a stupid character, which if you read the chapters before the attempted raid on Onigashima, before like the ships crashed and all that, Orochi really didn't seem all that crafty. Then we have the raid, and we see that Orochi had this plan where he took out all the bridges, and based on the information he got about the raid, he made plans to thwart the raid with the ships. So we saw a craftier side to Orochi, and he wasn't just this idiot who, by luck, became the shogun. And then in the flashback, we saw Orochi really weasel himself into the favor of the Kozuki clan. But what we have with this scene with the old lady, who mysteriously we don't know who she is, but part of me is a little, not even disappointed, just part of me feels like, okay, it would have been nice if this was completely on his own and it would have spoken more to his craftiness. But the first thing that I said that I really liked about this twist is that we find out that before the flashback current time, the Korizumi clan, specifically his grandfather, and the Kozuki clan were at a battle for power, and just like Orochi's grandfather was poisoning people to gain power, and as we could have guessed, he got punished when they found out what he was doing. But Orochi meets this old lady, and she paints this picture where the Kurizumis were like almost chosen by the gods, like they were almost destined to be the shoguns of Wano. But the Kozuki clan, or specifically Sukiyaki, usurped this power from Orochi. Now, I get that this isn't like as like powerful to the audience in the sense that like me and like other One Piece readers, we're not gonna buy that like Orochi got like the bad end of a deal. I mean, he did because, you know, he's in poverty, but like nobody thinks if you start poisoning people that like life is just going to give you political power. It's just not how it works. But I guess it gives Orochi motivation to do everything that he sets out to do. And I like that it sets this history between the Korizumi clan and the Kozuki clan, but I guess what I find myself disappointed with this twist is that it takes away from Orochi's individual character, because whereas before it had seemed like he was like Dio, where he was doing everything completely on his own, for like his own personal motivation. But now with Orochi, we have this old lady kind of like whispering into his ear, and it almost feels like that Orochi feels like he's in the right, not because like he's just so awesome and like he came to okay, so I guess what I'm saying is it would have been nice if Orochi had just like come to the conclusion on his own that he was just like God's gift to the world, but I feel like we got cheated. And if you weren't an Orochi fan in the first place, this isn't a big deal. And me personally, I don't find it to be like devastating to the story. I guess this was just my expectation for Orochi's character, but with manga, it is always a continuous evolving story, so in situations like this, you can't let your expectations ruin the story, or else you're going to be a lot more disappointed than I am, because I'm not completely disappointed. I guess I'm left to figure out where Orochi is going and how his story is going to end now that it's not going the way I thought it was going to. Before I move on, I want to talk about the one thing in the Orochi twist, the Orochi subplot, whatever you want to call it, that is really bothering me, which is this old lady. Now, aside from what I just previously said, this could potentially ruin the Odin story. Now, here's what I mean. Orochi, on his own, based on the story we're getting, doesn't seem like he would have been able to overthrow the Kozuki clan. It seems like he really needed the help from this old lady in order to trick everybody into becoming like the Lord Regent, which we are now seeing in this week's chapter. We don't know where this old lady is from. We don't know who she is associated with. We don't even know her name. All we know is that she is clearly very old, although maybe that's not even true. Although, actually, yeah, she had to have been old because she knows about the grandfather, so she had to have been around that time. I don't know. But, point being, we don't know who this lady is or where she's from, and she comes out of nowhere claiming to be in favor with Orochi. What I'm trying to say is that if, like, even Orochi said, well, why are you helping me out? Like, why are you telling me all this? And she's like, whoa, never you mind who I am or what reason I would have. This lady has clearly been around the world. She clearly has greater motives that she's not revealing to Orochi. So this has the potential to be like a pretty big plot hole, in my opinion, because it seems like Orochi is getting the really good end of the deal with this like god tier help from the Mane Mane fruit and somebody to help him in the shadows who clearly like nobody else knows about. So I'm really interested to see how Oda treats this whole subplot with Orochi and the old lady. Next, I want to talk about Odin. Specifically, I want to talk about where Odin sees himself going. So Odin's been writing in his journal, his log, his diary, whatever you want to call it. And this week, he's writing that no matter where he goes, he always has this sense of adventure. And at this point, he's been traveling for a really long time. So the question occurs to him, how will I ever possibly like bring an end to my adventure? How will I possibly bring an end to my story? Now, this is like a seemingly simple detail in this chapter. I mean, obviously we know that Odin is going to become the shogun for a short-lived time, and he's going to pass on his dream to the retainers that they open the borders of Wano. We know that, but I really like this quote from Odin because it kind of humbles his character, because he's been this very Herculean character of epic proportions, and everything he does, it's very godlike. But then we have this like very human, not a fear, but just like a question about life. And I think it's a question that dawns on everybody. No matter what you do in life, eventually, hopefully, you find something that you really enjoy, whether it's working on YouTube videos, whether it's working on art, whether it's putting together cars, whether it's cooking, what have you. Whatever you do in life that you do for the rest of your life, eventually, at one point, you have to say to yourself, okay, I can't just do this aimlessly. I have to have some sort of long-term endpoint. I have to have some sort of climax, some sort of goal that I'm aiming for. And this is what happens with Odin. He's on this adventure and he loves it, but he realizes that there's really no meaning to it if it doesn't somehow end. Like, this is like with the story. The story feels very confusing if at the end of it, all your questions aren't answered and somehow you really don't know what you just read. With Odin, the question he's pondering is, how do I walk out of my adventure so that when I look back on it, I know what I was aiming for? And I guess, as you can tell, this isn't like an easy question to approach because, like I just said, it's a seemingly simple question. But when you sit down and you wrestle with it and you try to approach it, it's a lot more convoluted. So, again, I like that this humbles Odin. And I think what's going to happen is Odin, with his new family, his new babies, see him becoming more of an adult with more mature responsibility, babies, wife. Supposedly he's the second squadron captain. Don't know how long that's going to last, but he's maturing. So I think what's going to happen is Odin is going to say, okay, this whole adventure was so that I could realize how awesome like life in its whole is, how awesome the world is. So I think you can quote me on this because I'm going to hold myself to this by the time this flashback ends. I am predicting that Odin's like end to his adventure is, now that I've seen how great the world is, now I need to go back to Wano and open up the borders so that everyone can go out and see the world like I have and appreciate it on their own. Which I really like because it's kind of like Jing from Hunter x Hunter. Jing does this thing where he goes out to archaeological sites, but then he does what he needs to do so that it's those sites that he discovers are open to the public. And we see a similar thing with all the D's in One Piece, all the great figures. They live very free lives and they value their freedom. And when they interact with other people, just not even consciously, just by their nature, if they see someone weighted by something, whether it's an abusive family member, whether it's a ghost of their past, characters like Luffy and other leaders in One Piece, they do what they can to liberate that person. So we're seeing a theme of liberation here where Odin has freed himself up. He's been on this like odyssey because at some point he's gonna go to Roger, and then when he goes to Roger, eventually he's going to reach this point where he says, I need to go home. I just need to go home. I need to open up the borders of Wano. I need to free my people so that they can go see the world for themselves. So that's where I see where Odin's story is going. But who knows? I could be totally wrong. Finally, I have to talk about the introduction to Blackbeard. I'm very underwhelmed by Blackbeard's introduction. When I read the spoilers and I saw that Blackbeard was going to be in the chapter, I was like, awesome, this is great. One of the most important characters in the story, and we're finally going to see his origin. This was so underwhelming. So, if you should have previously seen like little tidbits of baby Blackbeard and put together that like he was sad in the movie. In the Z movie, we saw like a little bit of him just like staring off into the sky and like being all sad, and that's pretty consistent with what we see here. But what we see here is that he's orphaned, and when they meet him, they're like, "Oh, do you want to come with us?" And he's like, "Yes, please, let me come with you." And let me explain why this is kind of boring to me, at least right now. So compared to Orochi, with Orochi we have like all these different factors of like where he came from and like his motivation. With Blackbeard, he's just some random orphan. Now, I know there are a lot of people talking about he could be like connected to the Rocks Pirates. And there's so much about him in the like current present setting that is still unknown. So it makes sense that his origin would be like equally like just mysterious. Like all we know is that he's an orphan. But I had hoped, and I still really hope that we get more out of Blackbeard's story. I really just want like a little bit. Because I know that Blackbeard is a major player in the One Piece story. He's the antithesis to Luffy's character, so it only makes sense that we would learn the lion's share of his story towards the end. I get that, and it wouldn't make sense if we gave it all away right now. But I kind of wish... I don't know, I guess I'm just being picky, to be completely honest, because it doesn't ruin anything about the story. Again, I just had these expectations that we would get a little more out of the origin of Blackbeard, and all we really get is like a bunch of other characters. It seems like he was an orphan, Whitebeard likes being daddy, so he said, hey, come aboard my ship, I got plenty of room. And that's how we meet Blackbeard. And that is it for this chapter. I know there was a ton more to talk about, but those were the 3 important things that I needed to talk about. Make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see my future videos when they are posted. I am working on Todoroki. That is coming. Make sure you like the video if you enjoyed what I had to say, because it really does help me out. Make sure you follow me on Twitter, because I'm going to be watching and reading a lot in the next coming weeks. So follow me on Twitter so you can stay posted with that. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope to hear from you soon.